الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. قال الإمام ابن رجب الحنبلي رحمه الله تعالى ونفعنا الله بعلوم في الدارين آمين. So chapter 8, my dear brothers, on benefit and harm being ordained. Just so everybody can recall, this entire treatise is on one hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So today's chapter will be discussing the section where our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told Abdullah bin Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma that know that all harm and benefit is from Allah. And the part of the hadith is as follows. O Abdullah bin Abbas, if all of creation together wanted to benefit you with something that Allah has not destined, they would not be able to do it. And if they wanted to harm you with something that Allah has not ordained against you, they would not be able to do this. Imam Ibn Rajab continues to say, elaborating and explicating the hadith, what he sallallahu alaihi wasallam means by the aforementioned is that whatever happens to the slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his worldly matters, whether harm or benefit, it is all destined for him. And something that is not written for him and not destined for him can never happen to him, even if all creation together try to make it happen. The Quran has also indicated a similar meaning in Allah's words, قُلْ لَن يُصِيبَنَا إِلَّا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَنَا. Say nothing can happen to us except what Allah has ordained for us. In addition, His subhanahu wa ta'ala words, مَا أَصَابَ مِن مُصِيبَةٍ إِلَّا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا فِي أَنفُسِكُمْ إِلَّا فِي كِتَابٍ. Nothing occurs either in the earth or in yourselves without its being in a book. In addition, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ لَوْ كُنْتُمْ فِي بُيُوتِكُمْ لَبَرَزَ الَّذِينَ كُتِبَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْقَتْلُ إِلَى مَضَاجِعِهِمْ. Say, even if you had been inside your homes, those people for whom being killed was decreed would have gone out to their place of death. This verse is revealed in the context where the Munafiqeen said, if the Sahaba listened to us and they stayed home, they wouldn't have been attacked. So Allah is saying that death will come. Whether you are in the battlefield or you are on your bed, death will come. Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi alayhi quotes the hadith of Abu Darda radiyallahu ta'ala an, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, إِنَّ لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ حَقِيقَةً وَمَا بَلَغَ عَبْدٌ حَقِيقَةَ الْإِيمَانِ حَتَّى يَعْلَمَ أَنَّ مَا أَصَابَهُ لَمْ يَكُنْ لِيُخْطِئَهُ وَمَا أَخْطَأَهُ لَمْ يَكُنْ لِيُصِيبَهُ. Everything has a reality, and a slave of Allah can never achieve the reality of faith until he knows that what afflicted him was never going to miss him, and that what missed him was never going to afflict him. Abu Dawood and Ibn Majah too quote the hadith of Zayd bin Thabit radiyallahu ta'ala an from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam with this meaning. The whole of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam advice to Abdullah bin Abbas revolves around this core concept, and what follows it and precedes it are branches of it, and they depend on it. Yani the khulasa, the pivotal part of the entire hadith is this hadith, this part, and everything that else that follows depends on this. That all harm and benefit is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because all harm and benefit is from Allah, you should only ask Allah. وَإِذَا سَأَلْتَ فَاسْأَلِ اللَّهِ. Because all harm and benefit is from Allah. وَإِذَا اسْتَعَنْتَ فَاسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ. If you need assistance, only ask Allah. Because all harm and benefit is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you rely on Allah. Everything that follows, the key, the foundation is the nafa' and nuqsan, harm and benefit. Nafa' and darar, harm and benefit is in the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, if the slave knows that no good or bad and benefit or harm can affect him except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for him, and the whole of creation together trying to do contrary to what is destined will have absolutely no benefit, then he will know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone is the one who harms, the one who benefits, the bestower and the preventer. Once he knows this, then the slave of Allah must declare his Lord alone as the one whose assistance is sought, the one who is asked, implored and supplicated to. He must also worship and obey only him, since the purpose of worshipping one who is worshipped is to gain benefit and repel harm. So even worship, why do you worship Allah? Because He is the only one that can benefit you and harm you. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rebukes one who worships what cannot benefit or harm, nor does it avail the worships in any way. Worship in any way. In the Quran, وَيَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَنْفَعُهُم وَلَا يَضُرُّهُم. Again and again Allah mentioned in the Quran, where they worship other than Allah, those idols that do not benefit and harm. So this is the pivotal part of the hadith, upon which all of the teachings are based on this. And this is also the khulasa of Tabligh Jamaat. Yes, the khulasa of Jamaat is this. Yaqeenon ki durust ki. Maulana Ilyas rahmatullah alayh in his Malfuzat he's mentioned, and so has Maulana Yusuf Khan rahmatullah alayh in his Malfuzat mentioned, that I do not name this Jamaat as a group, but if I was going to name it, I was going to name it Tahriq-e-Iman, a movement of Iman which corrects this core belief. Yes, is an effort which corrects this core belief that everything happens only with the permission of Allah, and nothing can happen without Allah. Yes, Allah says sab kuch hone ka yaqeen, makhluk se kuch na hone ka yaqeen. This is the khulasa of the effort of Tabligh. And this is the khulasa of this very important advice of the Prophet to Abdullah bin Abbas upon which everything else is based. Everything else is based upon this. If this part of the aqidah is correct, then everything else, your tawakkul, your yaqeen, your reliance, your hope in Allah, everything will follow inshallah if this is correct. There are many who do not believe. There are many who do not have. There are many who do not have belief established in their hearts, and they prefer obedience to creation over obedience to Allah, hoping they will benefit them or repel harm from them. Yet, if the slave establishes that Allah alone benefits, harms, grants, and repels, then that must lead him to obey and worship Him alone, and he will prefer his obedience over the obedience of all creation. Thus, this understanding that Allah alone harms and benefits must also lead to the realization that Allah alone should be asked and only His assistance should be sought. This exhaustive, amazing counsel, this part of the hadith, the only benefit and harm is in Allah's control. This part of the hadith contains all of these pertinent points. If a slave of Allah is mindful of Him, then he is mindful of His limits and upholding His rights, the essence of worshipping Him, which was the first point introduced in the counsel, the advice. The consequence of that is that Allah is mindful of His slave, which is ultimately what the slave seeks from his Lord. That is then followed by becoming acquainted with Allah in times of ease, as it is required for Allah, as it is a requirement for Allah recognizing His slave in times of difficulty, which is the perfection of Allah's recognition of His slave, and it's included in it. So Imam Ibn Rajab is mentioning how all of the advices are based on this. In the counsel, only times of difficulty are mentioned. And in the hadith, what did the Prophet ﷺ say in the previous sections? That remember Allah in ease, Allah will remember you in hardship or difficulty. Why did the Prophet ﷺ only mention difficulty? He will recognize you in times of hardship. Why? Since this is when the slave desperately needs someone to acknowledge him and save him. In this state, even those who associate partners with Allah are sincere in their supplication to Allah alone. A person needs Allah when they're desperate, when they're in need. Yes, that's why it's only mentioned difficulty. So much so that even an atheist who is in a 30,000 feet high plane, if the plane is about to go down and doesn't believe in Allah, he doesn't believe in God, in fact he's mocking the concept of God all his life, even he will remember Allah. Nobody has a choice. Everybody is desperate to remember Allah in this state. They ask and seek only from Him because they know that Allah none can remove harm except for Him. Then when the harm is removed, they start associating partners with Him again, as He has mentioned about them and censured Him, censured them in various places in his book. He subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to oppose them and contradict their habits by becoming acquainted with Allah in times of ease, with sincerity for his religion, by obeying him and seeing his proximity. The consequence of this is Allah recognizes us in times of hardship and help us navigate our way through them. So brothers, this is the actual imtihan and test, that we remember Allah at the time of ease. This is why the hadith is promised that Allah will remember at the time of difficulty if we remember him at the time of ease. If we remember Allah at the time of ease, automatically Allah will take care of our affairs in the time of difficulty. But this is the mercy of Allah, that even if you don't remember him at the time of ease and you only remember him at the time of difficulty, he still responds. This is Allah's Rahman Rahim. أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرِّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ, as the Quran mentions. But the promise of help and assistance is conditioned and stipulated normally that you remember Allah at the time of ease. And this is where the true test is. That you have everything, you have your health, you have time, you have wealth, you have your job, you have, mashallah, you know, your wife, your children, everything is fine. And then you remember Allah, then you sacrifice and you worship Allah. Because when you don't have no health, yes, and you're desperate, everybody remembers Allah. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said, نِعْمَتَانِ مَغْبُونٌ فِيهِمَا كَثِيرٌ مِنَ النَّاسِ. There are such two blessings, many people are deceived by these blessings. Ghaban is like ghaban fahish in fiqh, is the terminology. Great loss. People are in great loss because of these two blessings, meaning they lose out in accumulating deeds for the hereafter. They lose out in preparing for the akhir. They lose out in ascertaining high ranks in Jannah because of these two blessings. These two blessings have become an obstacle. They hinder the person from preparing. Number one, as-sihha, good health, and number two, faragh, free time. When a person has good health and free time, they want to chill and kill, they want to relax, they want to do things which displease Allah. And then when they become old and fragile and weak and feeble, yes, and they have sugar and they have blood pressure and their back is hurting, and then everybody wants to sit in the masjid. Even then, alhamdulillah, is good. Yes, at least they come to the masjid before death. But true worship is that person who in their youth, yes, in their prime, when they had every chance to do what they want, but they didn't. This is why one of the people that will be sitting in the throne of Allah is a person who, رَجُلٌ شَاب نَشَى فِي عِبَادَ رَبِّهِ, a young man who was nurtured and grew up in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why, brothers, those I mentioned before, those people cannot be same. A person who has spent his youth and young in the service of deen and in worship and in the masjid, and then that person who in the old age they come to the masjid, yeah, all their life, mashallah, they've chilled and killed, they've done everything in the book, and now, alhamdulillah, at least they've come to the masjid. It's a big thing, big ni'mah. May Allah grant us all tawfiq. But they cannot be treated the same. Yes? And neither should we treat them the same. And neither should that elder have authority over those young men who worship Allah all their life. Because they're now old and they've come to the masjid after so many years. Now they're throwing their weight around. Nah. Yes, there's a difference. There's a big difference. And that's how the deen differentiates between these people, categories. A person who sacrificed their youth, a person who hasn't, is like a person who gives wealth. لا يستوي منكم من أنفق من قبل الفتح وقاتل أولئك أعظم درجة من الذين أنفقوا وكلهم وعد الله الحسنى. Even the Sahaba, those who spent before Fath Makkah and those who spent after, Allah said they cannot be the same. Yes, وَكُلَّهُ وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الْحُسْنَى. Allah's promise for all of them goodness. There's khair in all of them, of course. But those who did it in the time of need and hardship is different. It's a different matter with this. Much different. This can only be realized when the slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala severs ties with creation, from asking them, seeking assistance from them, hoping that they will bestow benefit or remove harm, and fearing that they will inflict harm or prevent benefit. This too demands that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone be obeyed and worshipped, that His obedience be preferred over the obedience of the whole of creation, and that His displeasure be feared, even though that means the displeasure of the whole of creation. It has been narrated in the hadith of Abu Sa'id radiallahu ta'ala an, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, إن من ضعف اليقين أن ترضي الناس بسخط الله وأن تحمدهم على رزق الله وأن تذمهم على من لم يؤتك الله إن رزق الله لا يجده حرص حريص ولا يرده كراهة كاره. Symptoms of uncertainty, the lack of yaqeen. What is lack of yaqeen? That you please people at the cost of Allah's pleasure. That you praise them for Allah's provision. And that you find fault with them for something Allah did not give you. The desire of the greedy cannot find the provision of Allah for you. And the hate of the averse cannot repel it from you. Subhanallah. How excellent is the following statement of one of the pious Salaf. If only you were delighted, meaning speaking to Allah, if only you were delighted though life is bitter, and if only you were pleased though creation is angry, if only there was prosperity between me and you, and between me and the whole world only desolation. If love from you was true, everything would be insignificant, and everyone on the earth would be just earth. When an individual realizes that all of creation on earth are made of the same substance, yani soil, then how could he prefer obedience to some soil over obedience to the Lord of the Lords? If Allah controls all harm and benefit, then who should you only obey? Allah. Because if you disobey Him, He will harm you. He will harm you. If you obey Him, He will benefit you. And therefore the creation cannot benefit you. And the creation cannot harm you. Imagine having this yaqeen, my dear brothers. Life becomes so easy. You only do things for the sake of. It will save you so much disappointment in life. We go through a lot of disappointment sometimes, don't we? Because naturally, psychologically, humans like appreciation. And it is even the hadith Prophet ﷺ, that person should be appreciative. Man lam yashkurin nas lam yashkurillah. A person who does not appreciate people can never appreciate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as a way of principle, we should be appreciative to people. But looking at it from a first person perspective in terms of yaqeen and how our relationship should be with people, we shouldn't want anything in return, should we? Why? Because we are only doing it for Allah. What did the Sahaba say? إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ. We only feed you for the sake of Allah. لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. We don't want any payment, we don't want any gratitude, any thank you, any gift, and nothing in return. This will save you so much disappointment. Because especially with relatives, so many years I did good to them, and look, nothing, disappointment. Or you fear harm, especially at weddings. What happens at weddings? People lose it. Yes, they contravene every single sunnah in the book. Why? Because log kya kahenge? What will people say? Naak kat jayegi. Maulana sahab naak kat jaye. Pata nahi kitna bada naak hai, katti rehti, fir bhi wahan pe hai, mashallah. So to save honor, to save face, we don't want to have a bad reputation, bad name. We violate the sunnah at the time of marriage just to please our relatives. And then what happens with this? Neither the relatives pleased or is Allah pleased. Failure. I went to one particular wedding. I didn't go actually, alhamdulillah, I didn't go, but it was a relative wedding. They spent £100,000. £100,000. The groom and bride came in a helicopter. Not from Jannat, from this dunya se. £100,000. And people were still complaining that the fish was a bit cold. You can't get people happy. You'll never get people happy, my dear brothers. Wallahu wa rasuluhu ahaqqu an yarduh. Please Allah, follow the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. They're pleased, everybody's pleased. Allah's pleased, His Prophet is pleased, everybody's pleased. And those who are not pleased, they eventually also become happy and pleased. But if you displease Allah at the expense of people's pleasure, what will happen? Allah will be displeased and the people will remain displeased. People will never be happy. They like this. وَلَا تَجُوا أَكْثَرُ مِشْ like the Quran says. Shaitan says, I'm going to attack everyone, and most of them are going to be ungrateful. Unfortunately, majority of the people will be ungrateful. There will be a few, illa masha'Allah, from your family members or your circles who are grateful. what we both mushkil say. Majority of people are ungrateful. They're so ungrateful that 10 years you do good, and what happens? One bad thing, cancelled, finished. All of that good, where is it? We can't remember. What's the hadith of alayhi salatu wasalam? You're 20 years good to your wife. Yes. I mean, even men can be ungrateful too. Just to put that caveat in. When you come home once, and what did she say to you? Ma ra'aytu fika khayran qattu. I've never seen any good in you. Jab se ghar aayi hu. Since I've come home, I've never seen any good in you. Since I've come to this house, these 5-6 children, house, all of this, where did this come from? Nothing. I don't accept anything. This is insan. It's happened so many times. Ask the husband, has the wife done anything good? Nothing good. Ask the wife, has the husband done anything? Nothing good. Achha, so where did the 6 children come from? Did they come from the sky? This is insan. May Allah make us shakir, dhakir. A big quality, being grateful. Shukr. Yes, for the little that we have, shukr, always shukr, shukr. Actually, in psychotherapy, one of the methods they use for therapy is that they make the patient write 10 good things or 10 blessings in their life. And they say, now discuss these 10 good things. Research proves now that by the patient discussing the positive things in their life, it makes them mentally feel better. Allahu Akbar. But this is Quran, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you show gratitude and you be grateful, I will increase your blessing. وَلَإِن كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. And if you are ungrateful, then my adhab is severe. Adhab is not just punishment of Jahannam. Adhab is not the angels will come with AK-47 and punish you. No? Not having barakah at home is adhab. Your children and wife not listening to you is adhab. You're not being happy despite having money is adhab. These are all different types of adhab. The true happiness is where, my dear brothers? Here. Is in the heart. Here. Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. This state of the heart, you can be a homeless individual, yes, sleeping under the bridge next to the Morrison, yes, yet be happier and more jollier than the person who's sleeping in a mansion. Why? Because who's controlling the heart? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the early Muslims said, what Allah has destined for me is sure to reach me. Who is there can repel destiny with precaution. Allah is more entitled to us than we are to ourselves. We are nothing but own property. Yes, my dear brothers, you know what the poet means is precaution. Yani, it doesn't mean you don't take precaution. Of course you take precaution. You acquire asbab. But ultimately, your yaqeen is on Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will do this if it's going to happen. And if Allah hasn't written this, it will not happen. What's the biggest benefit in this, my dear brother? There are several big benefits. 2 big benefits are, number 1, you are building your correct faith and yaqeen and reliance on Allah. Number 2, you are relieving yourself from worry. It's mental worry, isn't it? When you have something on your mind you're constantly thinking about, if you delegate that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I have done what I could, now it is up to Allah, whatever the results are. That will relieve you of mental tension, it will relieve you of mental stress and anxiety. Because now you know, okay, whatever's happened, I'm happy because Allah will do it. Conversely, if your reliance is on the means, if your reliance is on that individual, if your reliance is on that money, you're going to keep on worrying and keep on checking and taking accountability. And will that change the result? It will not change the result. Whatever result is written is going to happen. So what it means here is, who is there that can repel destiny with precaution? Yani, if Allah is written, even your precaution cannot do anything. Like Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala said, Araftu Rabbi bifaskhil azaim. I recognize my Rabb when my plans failed. When my plans failed, I realized that there is Allah who's controlling everything. Yes. A man complained to Fudayl bin Iyad rahimahullah about poverty. So Fudayl said to him, do you seek a manager other than Allah? One of the early pious Muslims said, plan, but the plan will avail you nothing. Plan, but the plan will avail you nothing. Any plan, but remember that the plan will not benefit you. The ultimate benefit will come from Allah. As fate will not pass you by with all your plans. All matters have a Lord who manages them. And whatever the Lord has determined, fate drives it forward.
The plan is still part of the asbab.
Of course.
You should still,
Yes.
Ramadan.
Maulana Yusuf Khandil rahmatullahi would say, out of Hayat al-Sahaba, the asbab ki nafi karna sunnat ki khilaf hai. To negate the asbab is against the sunnah. This is not part of our deen. We are instructed, part of our deen's injunction is that we acquire asbab. Like asbab par yaqeen rakna ye bhi shirk hai. But to have complete reliance on asbab and that the means are the ones that causes efficacy, this is also a form of shirk. نقف بهذا القدر إن شاء الله. Stop here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq. Continue with this tomorrow inshallah. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika. Wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta.
A question for you today. So you mentioned lack of yaqeen.